This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 40. Well, welcome. Today's episode is about teen dating abuse and violence. I have marked this episode as explicit only because I've used the word sex in here a few times, and part of that is just to give a heads up for folks who are listening to that may trigger for some folks. So there's no cursing or anything like that in this episode, but the terminology or the word sex has been used. I know this topic can be difficult to hear, but I am encouraging you to listen because unfortunately, this continues to be an all too common issue I see in my practice. In the past, I co-facilitated a domestic violence batterers intervention group for teen boys. They had been charged with being either physically abusive towards a partner or a family member or a person, and they were required to either attend a 26 or a 52-week programs for perpetrators. That same agency I worked at had a group for teen girls and a group for adult males and adult females. So this episode, I'm going to talk about a dating relationship abuse between, your teen daughter and maybe a boyfriend, but it also happens in same-sex relationships. A lot of times that's actually underreported, but I want to put that out there that this is for both girls and for boys, that it can happen with either gender. There's not just, it's all men that are abusers or all boys that are abusers. It's actually both genders. So some statistics about teen dating violence. 1 in 3 high school students experience some form of dating violence, and that can be physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abusive in their relationship. Loveisrespect.org, their website, states that nearly 1.5 million high school students nationwide experience physical abuse from a dating partner in a single year. They also say 1 in 10 high school students have been purposefully hit, slapped, or physically hurt by a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Girls and young women between the ages of 16 and 24 experience the highest rate of intimate partner violence, almost triple the national average. Among female victims of intimate partner violence, 94% of those aged 16 to 19 and 70% of those aged 20 to 24 were victimized by current or former boyfriend or girlfriend. Violent behavior typically begins between the ages of 12 and 18. They also go on to state the severity of intimate partner violence is often greater in cases where the pattern of abuse was established in adolescence. The CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the question that they have on their website, people have asked, why does dating violence even happen? So they talked about in there, communicating with your partner, managing uncomfortable emotions like anger and jealousy, and treating others with respect are just a few ways to keep relationships healthy and nonviolent. They state teens receive messages about how to behave in relationships from peers, adults in their lives, and the media. All too often, these examples suggest that violence in a relationship is normal, but violence is never acceptable. So they go on to list there are reasons why violence actually occurs. And they state that violence is related to certain risk factors. Risk of having unhealthy relationships increase for teens who, 1, believe that dating violence is acceptable. If they are anxious, depressed, or have other symptoms of trauma. And again, trauma means if they're in an environment where they're being physically abused, pushed, slapped, kicked, punched, if they're witnessing that over and over. So those are all forms of different types of trauma. They also go on to say some of the risk factors are display aggression towards peers or display other aggressive behaviors. And that could also look like if they're hurting pets, things like that. That is a warning sign for abuse. If they use drugs or illegal substances, that increases the risk. If they engage in early sexual activity and have multiple sexual partners, have a friend involved in dating violence, have conflicts with a partner. Again, what I talked about, if they have symptoms of trauma, and this is one of the warning signs, is witness or experience violence in the home. Dating violence can be prevented when teens, families, organizations, and communities work together to implement preventative strategies. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later in the episode. So here are some warning signs for parents and for those that are listening who maybe you're a teenager, maybe you're in your early 20s, or you're just trying to find out more about what dating violence even looks like or what it means. So some warning signs of possible abuse is if the person is checking your cell phone or your emails or social networks without permission. So for example, if your boyfriend says, hey, let me look at your phone, I want to see who you've been calling, or they're logging onto your social media accounts and you've not given permission to do that, that's not okay. If there's extreme jealousy or insecurity, that would look like, I don't like that you're talking to other boys at school. I don't like that you're hanging out with, maybe some male relatives. I just don't like that. That's not okay. If there's constant belittling or put downs, again, that can look like direct insults in the sense of, you're so stupid, you don't know how to read a book, you can't do anything right, you're not worth anything. All of that is verbal abuse. That's not okay. If there's explosive temper, if he is trying to isolate you from family and friends, if he begins to make, false accusations, again, going back to kind of erratic mood swings, the clear sign of violence is if there's physically inflicting pain or hurt in any way. If he's trying to be possessive of you, of your time, of your things, if he threatens to break your possessions, that's not okay either. That's, again, a sign of power and control. If he's telling someone what to do, for example, he says, you need to go get me some dinner, you need to go get me a drink, you need to pay for our time out, whatever that may be. If he's telling you what to do, that's about power and control, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. If he's repeatedly pressuring you to have sex, one thing to look for, parents, is if you see a behavior change in your daughter. If she's typically outgoing, seems more self-confident, and she's doing all that, and now she's in this relationship where you notice she's putting herself down a lot, if she seems more depressed or withdrawn, if she seems slightly more anxious about going out with friends or her boyfriend, those are some warning signs that there may be something going on within that relationship. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about what I mean when I was talking about the power and control. So when you go out to the show notes later on, there's going to be two different handouts. One is called the Teen Power and Control Wheel. The other one is the Equality Wheel for teens. And this is from the National Center on Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence. So the Power and Control Wheel, on the outside, it shows, physical violence or sexual violence. But there's also 8 different pie sections that they have put within this wheel. One is called anger and emotional abuse, which again, that goes back to what I talked about earlier. If they're putting you down, they're name calling, making you think you are crazy, mind games. If they're using this social status, treat you like a servant, making all the decisions, acting like they're the master of the castle. If they're using intimidation, again, making someone feel afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying property, abusing pets. If they are minimizing or denying or blaming. So again, they can make light of the abuse. Well, if you wouldn't have made me so mad, I wouldn't have done that. So again, that's blaming you. Again, it's never ever your fault if the person is being abusive. They're threatening, making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt another, threatening to leave, threatening to commit suicide, to report him or her to the police. Then there's the sexual coercion, manipulating or making threats to get sex, getting her pregnant, threatening to take the children away, getting someone drunk or drugged to get sex. Another piece of the pie here is the isolation/exclusion. Again, this goes back to controlling what the other person does, who she sees, who she talks to, what she reads, limiting outside involvement, using jealousy to justify the action. And then the last part of this wheel is the peer pressure, threatening to expose someone's weakness or spread rumors, telling malicious lies about an individual to a peer group. That's all about power and control. So those, again, are warning signs of that there's possible abuse and or violence going on in the relationship. On the opposite side of that is called the equality wheel, and that's all about nonviolence. So again, there's the same amount of kind of pied sections within this wheel, and one of them is the non-threatening behavior. So a healthy relationship, again, there's non-threatening behavior, talking and acting so that you feel safe and comfortable expressing yourself and the things that you do. There's mutual respect, listening to one another and non-judgmentally. There's trust and support, meaning, he supports your goals in life, respects you to own your own feelings, friends, activities, and opinions. There's also honesty and accountability, means accepting responsibility for self, acknowledging past use of violence, admitting being wrong, communicating openly and truthfully. Another piece of the pie is the self-confidence and personal growth, respecting her personal identity and encouraging her for individual growth and freedom, supporting her security and her own worth. There's the shared power, taking mutual responsibility for recognizing influence on the relationship, making decisions together. Then communication, willingness to have open and spontaneous dialogue, having a balance of giving and receiving. It's problem solving to mutually benefit, learning to compromise without one overshadowing the other. Then the last part talks about the negotiation and fairness, seeking mutually satisfying resolutions to conflict, accepting changes, being willing to compromise. So again, you've got the power and control wheel, and on the flip side, a much more healthy relationship is called the equality wheel, where that goes for both teens and it goes for adults as well. So here's what you can do if you think that your daughter is in an abusive relationship. First and foremost, listen without judgment. Help her understand that your home is a safe place that she can come and talk to you about what's going on. It's not about putting down the boyfriend or the girlfriend who is being abusive, because sometimes that makes it worse, meaning she can go towards them more. Then it's like she doesn't have a space to be able to tell you what's going on. Share your concern with your daughter about how she's being treated in her relationships. I've noticed that you seem more withdrawn. I'm really concerned about that. Your, joyful, playful behavior seems to have kind of disappeared. I would love to know what's going on. Help me understand. Remind her it is not her fault and she doesn't deserve to be treated that way. So if you are watching a movie, let's say it's a family movie, and you see a teen girl that is being abused in the movie, point that out in a sense that you're stating, wow, what is going on with her is so not okay. She doesn't deserve to be treated that way. What do you think you would do if something like that happened to a friend that you knew, or that if it was going on with you? Brainstorm that, role play those things out up front so she understands that, one, it's never ever her fault, that it doesn't matter what she says or does, in the sense that, if she's being abusive, that has to stop. But I'm saying if she's not, and she wore an outfit that was the so-called wrong color for him, it doesn't mean she deserves to be abused at all. If she's having a bad day, she doesn't deserve to be abused. The other thing to remind her is that she can't change the other person. She's got zero power over changing anybody else. Talk about, encourage her to really create a code word or a signal to let her friends know if she thinks she's in danger. Make sure that, this is for you teenagers or for you young women out there. Make sure you have a list of important phone numbers in your cell phone, and that is with you all the time. If it's not in your cell phone, at least you've got it in your purse, in your pocket, so that you can call somebody if you need to. Brainstorm what you can do or places where you can go if your boyfriend becomes violent. Tell friends or parents where you are going or what you may do when you're with the boyfriend. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. It is totally okay to do that if you are in danger. But also write down what happens in a journal or a notebook. This may actually be important later on, that you've kept these records of what has been happening. The other thing I would recommend is get some professional help, whether that's a support group from a domestic violence shelter, get some mental health counseling to work through those traumas, begin to regain your self-confidence. And you can either do this as a family or as an individual, but get some of that support that you need to know that, again, this is not your fault. You don't deserve to be treated this way. I hope this has been helpful because, again, what I said earlier, it's an all too common issue in our country. And I hope that by raising some more of this awareness and talking about it more, it helps open up the family dialogue to begin to look for these things and to stop the violence. In my show notes, I have a list of different resources from the CDC to Love and Respect organization, which is loverespect.org. Break the Cycle, Women Helping Women, RAIN, which I know I've talked in a previous episode regarding sexual assault with Laura Reagan, and we talked about RAIN. That's RAINN.org. There's a helpline here for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I'm also going to include in the show notes the Wheel of Violence and the Wheel of Equality so that you have it. And then a couple different books. One of them is by Patricia Evan. It's called Teen Torment, and it's called Overcoming Verbal Abuse at Home and at School. She does a really nice job of explaining what verbal abuse is and how to recognize it and also ways to kind of get out of it. So again, I hope this has been helpful and I appreciate you listening. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, I'm going to encourage you to do so. I'm getting some more feedback of what you all are looking for, which is awesome. So I'm going to try and break my newsletter down into specific sections that really kind of answer some of the parenting questions that you may have and talk about some of the upcoming episodes as well. So I invite you to go out to launchingyourdaughter.com and sign up for the newsletter. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.